we're talking about the ACT, and here is the order that you take the test in. What I'm focusing on right now is the math test, and the math test comes second. So after the math test, I think you get a break after that. At your English and your math, I'm pretty sure there's no break between the first two. And why is it important? Getting into the college you want. I've had kids get tutoring for the ACT because they were getting scores that weren't going to let them in to the school they really wanted. Like if you want to go to, the U of M, nowadays it's harder and harder to get into the U. Kind of really strange twist from the past. In the old days, it was easy to get into the U, and it was hard to get into private schools. Now it's kind of reversed a little bit because of the cost. The U of M is only like $22,000 a year, and places like St. Olaf are like at $50,000 a year. And I think that's part of why the U's get a ton of applications. So the U or Madison's another popular one kids want to get into, and you have to have pretty high ACT and test scores and stuff. Thank you. Scholarships, we talked about that briefly before I started the video. Some schools have automatic scholarships. You get a certain score on your ACT and you're in. Like here's one. This is a full ride tuition fee. They'll even pay for your books and your room and your board at the University of Alabama Huntsville. This is found at a website that I will show you right here. And it's a full ride. How many of you have a 3.0 GPA? You don't have to raise your hand because it's probably almost everybody if you're pretty young. And a 34 ACT. Now, that's tough. But 34 ACT, literally all you'd have to do is mail ACT tomorrow, and you'd have, as long as you have over 3.0, you'd have a full ride, free, like no cost at all to support your parents. College degree. That's pretty impressive. And that's just one of literally, I'd say, 30 schools that are at this website. It's collegetalkconfidential.com, and it's got this huge list of schools that have big-time scholarships. This Alabama Huntsville is only first because it's A for Alabama. Look at, there is 21 pages of these. Okay, so there are schools that will give you a significant, serious, help all the way up to full ride scholarships for having high GPA and high ACT scores. Okay, so my point is the ACT is worth doing well on for, if nothing else, the perspective that you might get some serious scholarships out of it. All right, let's talk about the ACT test itself. 60 questions, 60 minutes. Obviously, that means about 1 minute per question. Now, if you find yourself spending more than about 2 minutes on a problem, you're starting to tragically waste time. Because if you were to, heaven forbid, spend 10 minutes, you can imagine that, one hard math problem is 10 minutes long, right? You've just wasted 10 problems worth of time. See what I'm saying? You should have gotten done with 10 problems in time if you do that one problem. That should only happen at the very end if you're all done with the whole test. And I'm doubting that's going to happen for almost anyone. Because for me, as a math teacher, it's hard to finish this thing 60 questions in 60 minutes. I am rushed. Like I am flying. I'm a math teacher. Okay, so you know time's going to be an issue for a lot of people. If time is an issue, how do you handle that? Number one, when you come to a hard problem that seems like, oh, I really don't have a clue what to do, I would analyze for maybe 15, 20 seconds, and that's it. And I would either say, I'm going to do this one, or no idea, I'm taking a guess and moving on. Notice I said taking a guess right then. Some people say, circle the question to come back to it. Surveys show that most kids, in reality, intended to go back to it, but then what happens? They run out of time, and then they don't go back to it, and then they did never guess. If you leave one without a guess, it's like you're lowering your score automatically. Because if you would have guessed, you have about a 20% chance of getting 5 answers. There's a 20% chance you would have been right. And if you do that a few times, you've lowered your score. Because you could have easily gotten one of the ones you guessed on right. So make a guess and move on quickly. It's called triage in the medical field. They have 10 people come in and there's only one surgeon. They got to pick which one am I going to say. It's scary, but it's true. If you're dealing with that educationally on this test, you look at, okay, I've got 60 questions. Which ones can I get done in the time I have? You got to give up on something. Because if I gave you the hardest one and gave you an hour, you could all get it right. They're not impossible questions. It's just that under time pressure, you got to give up on certain ones. Okay, yes. All right, so the question was, can you sometimes narrow it down to a couple of the options and then guess from there? Absolutely. But from my experience, usually you either know how to do the problem or you don't. And if you don't know how to do the problem, you often can't even narrow it down. So I hear you, and we'll talk about a strategy like that in a moment. But from my experience, that doesn't usually work that way. I'll show you one like it, though. All right, you need to memorize some formulas. Like, for instance, if you don't know how to do the area of this triangle right now, then you'd have trouble on that problem on the ACT because they're not going to give you the formula for it. Everybody just warm up your brain a little bit. Figure out the area of that. Say it's in inches, and give me your answer including units. Write it down. If it's in inches, it would be in, all right. So if it's in inches, give it decimal inches. All right, so you go 8 times 4 is 32, and then what do? Cut it in half, because triangles are half of the rectangle that they would be going with, and that would make it 16 inches squared. All right, now that was an awfully easy one. Here's one that's a little harder that most kids don't have memorized. Say that's a 2, and that's a 10, and that's a 5. What's the area of this? Now, you can do it the slow way or the fast way. I encourage you to do it the fast way. That's called trapezoid. If you've forgotten the formula for this, I'm going to tell you, and then you'll have. I've seen lots of trapezoids on this test, so I would bet you this one comes up. It's only 50-50 chance even at best, because there's 200 things they could pick from that could be on the ACT. And so I can't tell you for sure there's one like this. But do you get if I did 10 times 5, I'd be doing that rectangle right there, and that would be too big. You get that? Okay, and if I do 2 times 5, that's obviously too small, because that would be this rectangle right here. Okay? But what you do then, if one is too big and the other is too small, it's average. So the 10 and the 2 have an average base of, add 10 and 2 makes, and then divide by 2 makes, average is 6. So a 6 times 5 is 30. How many of you guessed right on that one? All right, only 4 of you. So you learned something there you can use. You see what I just did there? I averaged the 2 bases. That is a trapezoid. The formula for trapezoid is to average the bases and times by the height. Okay? And the average of the bases is you go b1 plus b2 and then divide by 2. That's how you guys think you divide by 2 is averaging. Now I'm just saying average instead of b1 divide by 2 and then times height. And that'll work too. All right. So that's another formula that comes up a lot that I thought I could show you real quick and give you one more point. Okay, distance formula. Distance between 2 points. I'm going to show you how you should set this one up. It'd be awesome if you had already memorized the distance formula. And yet, I know most people haven't. So let's say we had a point 2, 3, and then another point at, let's say, 12, 7. How do I figure out the distance between them? That is a very typical test question. It's considered geometry. It's considered basically point geometry. I'll show you in the category later what it's officially called. So you should be thinking, well, that's basically just the hypotenuse of a triangle, and the triangle kind of looks like this. And so do you get the distance between here and here would be the x numbers? So the 2 and the 12, and how far is it between 2 and 12? 10. This is 10, and then the y distance would be what? 4, and so really it's just a triangle now. And I've taught you how to do these. We go square root of, and it's 10 squared and the 4 squared, and do I add them or subtract them? Add them. So I go 10 squared plus 4 squared. 10 squared is 100, plus 4 squared is 16, square root of 116. Now, would that be on the test as the square root of 116? Might be simplified. Do you remember how to simplify those? get how that breaks up into two square roots? You know, square root of this and the square root of that. Now, 116 isn't a really nice number, but at least it's even. So I could break it in half. Half of 116. Half of 100 would be 50, and half of the 16 would be 8. 58. Terribly. And 2. And then the 58 could break up. How my 58? 58 can break up in half of 58. So another root 2 times root half of 58. Half of 50 is 25. Half of 84. Root 24. There we go. And now do you get that the root 2 and the root 2 makes root 4, which is really 2? 2 root 24, and then it breaks up even further. That's another ACT skill. Oh, did I make a mistake in there? Yes? Thank you. 29, you are correct. 24, being 29 actually makes it a lot easier because you can't break up any further. Thanks for catching me. You're right. There we go. 2 root 29, and that's a very possible answer. Because ACT a lot of times doesn't use decimals. A lot of times they leave answers with pi or square roots in the answer because they want to know if you know how to do it that way. Like for instance, here's a circle, here's the radius, and the radius is 7. And they're not going to have a decimal answer. If they want the area of this thing, I would bet you money. What do you think they would have as the answer? 49 what? Pi. Notice it's pi r squared, and r is really 7, so we just go 7 squared, and then that's 49 pi. And don't bother typing it in your calculator until you look at the answers, because a lot of times they leave pi in the answer. Okay, I hope this is helping. I'm trying to give you some thoughts on, like distance, just make it into a triangle. Midpoint. How about the midpoint between these 2 points? Between 12, 7 and 2, 3. What's the midpoint? Figure it out if you know how to do it. It's really easy. The midpoint exactly between them. If you think about what that means math-wise, if you were exactly between two numbers, you know what that is? If you were exactly between 4 and 6, what are you? It's the average of 4 and 6, which is what? 5. What's exactly between 10 and 12? What's exactly between 10 and 12? 11. And that's the average of 10 and 12. So when I say the midpoint's exactly between these 2 points, it's the average of these 2 points. 2 and 12. Average them. 7, comma, averaging 7 and 3, they add up to 10, divided by 2, 5. You get how we averaged? We accidentally averaged the y, and we got the midpoint. That's how you find the midpoint. All right. Moving on. So, some other facts about this. Did you know that on the ACT test, they're always going to give you the answers in either ascending or descending order? They don't ever give them randomly. And you can use that to your advantage. Somebody asked before, if you were to test a number and try it and find out it doesn't work, let's say you tested one of these numbers. There is a logical one. The middle one. Not because you heard the legend that teachers always, pick Steve, like I will say people tend to go towards the middle because they like the middle. But the ACT is so carefully designed that they are not going to just have C be the answer. It's going to be random totally. But why should you pick the middle one? Because if it doesn't work because the answer was too big, if your answer is too big, now you're down to only those 2 choices could be it. And now, just like you said, you've got it narrowed down to a 50-50 chance. And if you have the time to check another one, check the 14, and if it doesn't work, the answer must be 12. But if you were done with time, you at least had it narrowed down to 2 of them. Now you got a 50-50 chance instead of a 20-50 chance. Always try the middle one. Yes? If you're guessing, can you guess randomly or just pick all the same ones? Yep, I got you. Good question. So let's say this was the question and you didn't have a clue how to do it and you were going to guess. My gut says that you're better off just guessing the same one randomly, like which one's going to do better? If you have a monkey tossing, like mud up here and he picks one randomly, okay, versus somebody who always picks A, they're going to do the same on average. Now, can the monkey do better by throwing the mud up at there? If he's a lucky monkey, sure. So you could also try to be lucky and say, oh, I feel like 20 feels good. Go ahead. Just don't waste time doing it. Because if you're wasting time going, well, does 20 seem like, if I was doing the ACT, would it be more like 20 or is it more like 22? If you're wasting any time, you're wasting time. Because you may as well just take the first one or take the last one. I will say this, though. Would you agree that on the ACT, if the numbers are pretty much random throughout, that if you guess the same number like 10 times, that on average you're only going to be right about 1 out of 5 times. You know what I mean? Because they're going to be spread around, and so you're not going to get all 10 of them right. There's no way. If you're going for the pure luck, then you better pick different numbers. You know what I'm saying? Because they're gonna distribute them on purpose. They're not gonna want 25 answers on the ACT to be A. They're gonna, that would be too much of a clue. People would, it's like spreading the word to friends. Like, I noticed that almost every answer was A, and then that gives people an advantage. So, see what I mean? So it's not likely you're gonna get them all right if you always guess A. So if you're trying for the feel lucky thing, go ahead, and it might increase or decrease your chances. You could also guess unlucky. I had a kid take a test in this very room where he had 25 questions and he didn't know any of them, and he guessed on every one of them, and he got every one wrong. I figured out the probability, 1 in 10,000 chance, and he did it. It's actually impressive. So anyway, if you're like, it almost is a proof of genius. Like, we had to have known what the right answers were and therefore choose the other ones. Because anyway, but I graded it like 3 times to be sure. Like, I can't believe this is happening. A multiple choice test. Anyway, so if you jump around like that, you can get unlucky or you can get lucky. If you just want to kind of get average, then pick something and go with it. Always pick like the first one, or always pick the last one, or whatever. Okay, moving on. The average kid in Minnesota gets about a 25. At your high school here, our average is about a 26. And the other thing that's cool is that Minnesota is a little above average nationwide, because nationwide the average score is about a 22. So we're already you're in one of the top in the nation. We usually trade places with Wisconsin, is often our competitor for the top ACT score in the nation. So anyway, Minnesota and Wisconsin, both really good states for education. And you're in one of the top schools within one of the top states. So you are obviously in a place, you're going to hear that kids get, like, a lot of kids got a 32. It's true. Our top 100 kids in Minnesota got in the neighborhood of 32. I'm not sure of exactly where it is this year, but it was in that neighborhood, which is crazy, because that's like top 1% nationwide. Lots of kids here get this. So you don't need to put that kind of pressure on yourself to get into a good school here in Minnesota. The typical school wants like on the higher end, wants like a 29. Okay, now but if you want to get into the top school, you'll probably be looking at more like a 32. 28 and above for scholarships. That's the magic number, huh? All right. Cool. All right. Wow. Yep. I know that from experience and working with the kids. It's not so easy to just raise your score a lot. If you're, it is hard. It's a thing. It's just a math test that you study for it. You can, but it takes a long time. I do know of a kid who started under 30 and ended with the perfect 36. And he did it by taking it 5 times. And if you just take it 5 times, you probably get a 30 every time. Really, you think you're going to get a lot better the second time you take it? You don't. But if you study hard for it, if you really want it, if you're willing to do the work, you can. And I saw this kid do it all the way to a 36. Now going Ivy League. So, can be done. It takes a lot of effort. All right, moving on. In general, I did this cool math and figured out that these two things are points. 41 out of 25, or 41 out of 60 is a 25, and 60 out of 60 is a 36. I know it doesn't work exactly this way, but I graphed it, and assuming it was a straight line between those two, I figured out the equation for that line. And what that really just means is every extra point you get right, you get 0.58 of an ACT point. You get how your perfect score is 36? So it's hard to say, like, well, I had like 10 wrong. What did I get? Well, you can put it into this little formula, and you'll at least be close. You can see how, so every extra point you get 0.58. So if you want to raise your ACT score from the last time you took it, every extra problem you get right, you're going to go up about a half an ACT point. So if you want to go, like she was talking about, from a 27 to a 28, then you need about 2 points for each jump, so you need about 4 more points out of 60 to get higher by 2 ACT points. It does seem, it's kind of hard to figure. It's like, seems like, okay, if I want to go from a 28 to a 29, I should only get 1 more point right on the test. Work that way. 4 more points for each, no, 2 more points for each jump. Actually, it's almost 3 points on the test. It's almost enough to get you 2 points on the ACT. Anyway, all right, moving on. If you've already taken the ACT, you might be curious about this. I'm going to let you see the scores here. How many people have taken the ACT? Oh, lots of you. All right. So if, let's say that you had on the higher end, let's say you had a 33, that would be phenomenal. You're in the top 99%. That's kind of weird is if you got a 34, a 35, or 36, those are all 99. What does that mean? They're just smaller and smaller parts of that top 20%. So if you've got a 33, you could say, honestly, you're in the top 1%. But if you got a 34, you're higher than the top 1%. You might be down to the top 0.75%. And this might be the top 0.5%. And this might be the top 0.1% instead of 1%. Anyway, if you're in this neighborhood, you can move the scores a lot if you go down into this neighborhood of 22s and 23s, because that's right where the average is. There's tons of kids in that zone, and so if you can move from a 22 to a 23, you just pass by tons of kids, I guess you say. Think of this as 100 kids who took the test, and if you do 1 point higher, you move ahead of 6 of them. So, all right, moving on. If you're taking higher algebra, which all of you have, you're pretty much ready, but you need trig. Well, you are in Precalc, so you have taken trig, and that means those questions actually aren't impossible for you like they are for the other kids. You have a shot at the 4 hardest questions on the test. And honestly, since we just had Precalc, as long as you don't have a terrible memory, we tried to time it so that we would finish our trig right before you took the test, so that the hardest questions are freshest in your mind. That means something interesting. A lot of people say that the hardest part of the test is last. Not always true. If you have just taken trig recently, the trig questions are usually last. In the last 10 anyway. And the point is, do you get that something we just learned last week, although it might be hard relative to the ACT, might be easy for you, because you just did last week. So the point is, you want to get to those last 10 questions. This will be the saddest thing, is if you go to the ACT and you don't finish the last 10 questions, because then you didn't even get a chance to do the stuff we've been teaching you recently, which actually would be relatively easy for you. So the best thing is if you skip some problems in the in-between time, because like, oh, don't think I'm going to be able to get this one right. Guess A, move on. If you get through all the questions, at least you give yourself a chance to get some at the end that are going to probably be easier for you because you had them recently. Also, don't be shocked. I'm a math teacher. I took a practice ACT where problems were stumped. I'm serious. Like, I had a mental block. I took like 2 minutes, maybe even 3 minutes. They're supposed to be a minute apiece, and the ones at the beginning are supposed to be half a minute apiece. I couldn't get it. Don't let that freak you out. I should have just taken a guess and then marked down that number 1 is one I should come back to if I had time. Because it's probably not that hard. I just have a mental block. But my point is, don't think that the ones at the beginning are the easiest, the ones at the end are hard. Not really like that. Yes? All right, there's not much probability on the test, but in the realities of space and time, we don't have much time to talk about it. So maybe at the end when I'm done, okay? All right, pre-algebra is 23% of the test, but for most of you, it was 7th grade. Some of you, it was 6th grade. Maybe some of you, it was 8th, but it was mostly was 7th grade. My point? That's a long time ago. You probably changed friends since then. You know, like everything's different. It's been so long ago. So some of these easy questions are actually the hard ones for you because you just haven't seen it before. That's one of the reasons that I think studying for the ACT actually can make a difference. Is because things like this aren't hard, but you will have forgotten some little dumb thing. Like if you're still going, I can't remember exactly how to solve this kind, or maybe, yeah, even if it was an H, and then it says solve it in terms of H. And you go, solve it in terms of H. I see it, I taught pre-algebra forever, so for me right away it's that times that equals that times that. It's not that hard. 2H, 3x, and then solve for H isn't hard at all, is it? What do I have to do now? Divide by 2, and it's, if you've forgotten things like that, though, like cross multiplying, you know, that can hurt you on the test. And studying like a little bit, no. All right, moving on. The main thing I want to draw your attention to here is that I told you before that that one point about distances between lines was geometry. That's called coordinate geometry. And the other part, plane geometry, that's like about shapes, you know, area of this shape, area of that shape. Here's a combo, like shaded inside, you know, one shape shaded inside another shape. That's all geometry, and notice how much together it adds up to. 38%. That's almost 40% of the test is geometry. And I know a lot of you had geometry once. Some of you didn't like it very much, and you moved on. We haven't done much since. Well, that's another area where more studying could probably help. Area of some shapes we went over before, etc. Like I said, trig 7%, about 4 questions on the test. All right, moving on. There is no penalty for guessing, so don't leave anything blank. Guess. Don't leave it blank. I mean, it's so easy to just bubble something quick. You got a chance. You really do. You get lucky, you might get an extra couple points off of that. All right. In general, are easiest to hardest. But like I said before, don't let it freak you out if it's an early one you don't get. Guess, move on. And you want to get to the end, because the ones at the end, even though they're theoretically the hardest, sometimes it's stuff you learned last week, and therefore not hard at all. All right, there's like 200 math topics you can draw from, which please type this into your Safari browser right now, act.org/standard. act.org/standard. It's on my screen. It's off the recording, but people that are here tonight, act.org/standard. Now I'm going to click on the left-hand side where it shows me the choices. I'm, of course, focusing on math right now. And the way they arranged this, at first I was really annoyed by it, but now that I understand what they did, it's actually kind of cool. They have arranged it so that if you have already taken a practice test and you know what score you had, like, or maybe you took the real thing, and you know you were in this range, they've arranged it so that all of the things you should study then to try to do better next time are in this column. You get what I'm saying? And it's a really long column. Because it narrows it down from 200 things you should study to just that column. Like, for instance, if you got a 24 to 27, you might have gotten this wrong. Least common multiple. Do you know where that is on your calculator? Everybody grab your calculator. I'll tell you where everything is on your calculator. Find the analog button lower left, right above the 0. Everything's there. So LCM is obviously there. Now, do you want to arrow through 500 things? No. When you go into the catalog area, did you know that it's automatically in alpha sort mode? So if you want LCM, go touch on the L. Find the letter L. The letter L is on your keyboard. It's green. And what key is it above for L? It's above one of the parentheses, L. If you hit L, it'll jump you right to the L's. And then you can find LCM. Is LCM on the list? All right, let's say we had to do the LCM of 20 and 50. You do LCM 20, comma 50. 20 comma 50, hit enter. That's the LCM. That's how you do it. Just use the LCM function on the calculator. Let's say we're looking for GCF. You'll never find it because it doesn't exist. But there is a GCF. Did you know that? GCF is what they're going to ask for on the test. Greatest common, what do you think that means? Factor. There is no such thing on the calculator, but there's greatest common divisor. One of the biggest mistakes that TI ever made, in my opinion, because it doesn't match up with ACT. So GCD is the exact same thing. You can do it with a parenthesis just like that. And by the way, if you have to do three numbers, GCD of 20, 30, and 40, for example, you can't put in three numbers, it won't let you. But if you find the GCD of the first two, you get that answer, then you can do the GCD of that as the third number. So let's say I do GCD of 20 and 30 and I get the answer. And it's like, what would it be? 20 and 30, greatest common divisor factor 10. Yep, it's 10. Then, I've already done that, and if I want to do 20, 30, and 40, I already know the answer to this one is 10. So now I go GCD of 10 and 40. And that would tell me it's 10. I think all right, so there's some thoughts about what you could study at act.org/standard. Next part, I'm going to pause the video and show you how to get your own account at a website that is really good for studying for the ACT. Okay, so now we're in that method test prep site, and what I'm asking you to do tonight is go to the area called Resource, and all I'm asking you to do is spend literally 5 minutes, your homework for tonight, 5 minutes on this site, with an optional 5-minute follow-up if you're really serious about studying tonight. But the 5 minutes I'm asking everybody to do, and by the way, it tells me, it sends me a link because of my link I sent you. It tells me all of your results. So I'll know how you did, or whether you did it or not. Click on Resources, and then you know there's 4 tabs across here. I think it could have been organized better, but those are 4 separate tabs. And what I want you to do is go to a video, and the 4th one down, the 4th video there, it says the 5 biggest mistakes students make on the ACT and SAT. A lot of people find that handy because if you keep from making 5 mistakes, obviously in theory that means you get 5 more right. And that's the kind of thing, if you can spend 5 minutes to do that, that'd be awesome. Okay, so I want you to watch that video, the 5 biggest mistakes, and then if you want to go above and beyond, go to Review Packets and quiz for the 5 biggest mistakes video. And it's basically like 5 questions to make sure you really learn about those 5 biggest mistakes. Okay? All right. So now, you now have everything you need in your hand to be able to do some studying for the ACT tonight. Do I expect you to study for hours and hours? No. All I ask you to do is 5 minutes, maybe 10. And don't watch it right this second. Please keep your attention for the next couple minutes. But I'm just going to show you a little bit more about what options they have. They have full-length exams right here. If you want to try a real exam, like full-length ACT number 1, full-length ACT number 2, you can do a full, 4-hour test. I would not do that tonight to try your brain. But maybe you do, look at one of the English ones halfway, do it halfway or something. Do whatever you want to do. But this has got a lot of resources, including all 4 parts of the test, the whole test. It's all electronic. Tells you your score at the end. That's pretty handy. All right. So there's a lot of good things here. I encourage you to use it. A few more closing thoughts. 57% of kids improve when they take it the second time. That, of course, means that 43% don't improve. It's not a lot. People think, oh, I've taken it already. I know so much better how to do it now, and it's not that easy to do better. You actually got to do some study. You actually have to learn something in between. Otherwise, you just really won't probably do much better. It's very well designed test that way. You have to actually get smarter to get a better score. All All right. Did you know that you can order for $15 the exact test you took and a report that tells what you answered and what the right answer actually was? Here's why I'm bringing this up. It's not something like Minnetonka wants the money. I'm not even sure if it'll be available for the test we take here in school. This is new ground. Minnesota's never tested every kid for ACT in school, so we don't know. But normally they offer this option for you for $15. They'll tell you what you chose for each question and what the right actual answer actually was, which is really good feedback if you're going to study for your next one. So you can see, oh, I got all the geometry ones wrong, or oh, I can tell I was terrible in the science section, or whatever. Otherwise, all you're going to get is you got a 32 in math. You won't know why. So anyway, that's something to consider doing in the future. All right. I guess one other thought. Most colleges only take the highest score you submit, but for some schools, they will look at all of your ACT scores. If you send it to them, they can see it. So if you send them the score automatically, I think that's an option on the ACT, isn't it? Then just be aware that if you do a terrible job, they're going to see it. So you may choose wisely whether or not to send it to them. I wish you could choose after you took the test. You could feel like you nailed it or didn't, but you don't get that choice. So it is free if you do it at the moment, and most colleges are just going to take the highest score that you send them. But some of them at least are going to say, well, we can see if you got a 21 the first time you took the ACT. Maybe you wouldn't want them to know that. So choose wisely whether or not to send them directly. All right. I think that's all I'm going to share with you for today. I hope you feel like you learned something. Have a great day.